Okay, we have item number 2, which is amendment to Government Staffing Services, Inc. contract staff report.
Good evening, council members. Before you see a staff report requesting an amendment to our Government Staffing Services contract, and this is for $20,000 to cover increased compensation for our interim city manager as required by Government Code 21221H, which is the law regarding CalPERS retired annuitants. A little background on why we're requesting this. Originally, starting with a prior interim city manager, which was Homer Croy, PERS contacted us because they had read in the newspaper that we were going to be hiring him. Even though it was through a temp agency, the new CalPERS retirement requirements require reporting of that individual, whereas in the past, if you hired someone through a temp agency, PERS was not in the picture. They started reviewing documents, contracts, et cetera, with that interim city manager. And the agency, Government Staffing Services, has in their contract with their employees a confidentiality clause. Because they did not want to release information related to their clause, that was handled through Government Staffing Services and PERS. Okay, went through that process, and the agency was going to report to PERS directly so they would not have to reveal confidential information to us. However, several months after Mr. Croy was gone, and about the time that Mr. Martin was appointed the interim city manager, we were notified that the agency had not reported that information to PERS. So they again contacted us for more information. I did inform them that Mr. Croy was no longer with us, that we had a new incumbent filling that position, which started the whole process again. We had to give them Mr. Martin's contract, the new contract with Government Staffing Services. They had to review his job position, et cetera, and make a determination as far as his employment. They did do an administrative investigation on all the paperwork to see that it did meet the requirements for hiring a retired annuitant, and found that once Mr. Martin had been appointed the interim city manager, that we were not in compliance with PERS law. The law requires that the incumbent be compensated no lower than the minimum and no higher than the maximum for that position, as if an employee were there. So the salary scale that we had established for a city manager that was documented and was also published in our recruitment is what they based that on, and Mr. Martin was not being compensated at that level. So we were in violation with PERS law. They did complete their administrative review. They did determine that in this one instance, they would not penalize us. They did not fine us. They could have charged us administrative fees for the investigation, as well as fines and penalties related to not being in compliance. They chose not to do that. They also stated that we should compensate Mr. Martin appropriately to be in compliance with the law. They also said again that they would not penalize us if we chose not to. Staff, however, is recommending in this case that we do, due to the fact that Mr. Martin did assume the job of interim city manager versus his original appointment as the administrative services director. He did assume those duties and therefore should be compensated for those duties. And we could also, with a clean conscience, say that we were in compliance with PERS law regarding this matter. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
We'll start with Councilmember Moyer.
Oh, okay. To me, this is a Muni-Temp's problem. I'm sorry. We rely on them as the experts in dealing with these things. They're the ones that sent them to us. They're the ones that actually gave us a contract, and they knew he had been moved into another position and still made no effort, as far as I've heard, to come back and say we need to compensate him more. And that's my feeling. And again, I'm not trying to take money out of Dean's mouth or anything, or any like that. But I just don't see why we're being held responsible for Munitemp's problem.
Basically, the amount of money that we're asking for, like I said, it's not additional charges or penalties or fees. This is salary, regardless of who would have informed us. Had they informed us, the city would still be required to pay it. It's not an additional fee that we're being asked to pay now.
Okay.
This is salary the city would have always been responsible for.
But our contract isn't directly with Dean. Our contract is with Munitemps.
And PERS
And if
law,
they messed up, why doesn't Munitemps give him the 20,000?
because we are paying the contract, which includes the compensation to the incumbent. PERS does not,
We're paying
shouldn't say they don't care.
We're paying the contracted amount.
correct.
If
And that
they-
amount is not enough to cover the increased salary.
So
with the incumbent.
whose problem is that?
According to PERS, it's ours.
Well, according to me, it's Munitemps. Sorry.
Yeah, PERS looks, that's what when PERS first contacted us, I had the same clarification issue, because normally when you hire through a contractor, your hands are kind of free, it goes to the contractor. PERS, with the new PERS retirement law, looks at what the incumbent is being paid, regardless of whether you're going through a temp agency or hiring them as a consultant. They only care what the actual incumbent is getting, and we are responsible to hire them at that salary. We did not contract with government staffing services for an amount appropriate enough to cover the appropriate salary that he should have been entitled to.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I just can't get past the fact that we may have missed it, but that's their business. They're the ones who gave us the contract. They're the ones that approved the rate. It is their business. I mean, yes, we should know too. You're right. But they are the experts because they're sending people out all over the state. That's the way I look at it.
Okay. Councilmember Peterson?
So, Michelle, what you're saying is that we're in violation of Government Code 21221H,
Correct.
and that the city is out of compliance,
Correct.
and that staff, when you say staff is recommending, who is staff?
Well, we didn't feel it was appropriate for Dean to recommend this himself. So personally, me, Rita and I, as the Deputy Finance Director and Deputy HR Director, are acting in that capacity to recommend on behalf of the city.
And who prepared the staff report?
I actually did.
Do you happen to have the correspondence from CalPERS?
It was actually email correspondence. I didn't bring a copy of the email. I do have that in my files. I could print a copy of my email out and provide it to you.
Okay. You probably should have made it a part of the staff report. Now, have you actually read Government Code 21221H?
Yes, and I actually brought a PERS circular letter too that documents the requirements of the law as well.
Okay. I'm going to read it so that the public can actually hear it. California Government Code 21221H. A retired person may serve without reinstatement from retirement or loss or interruption of benefits provided by this system as follows. Upon interim appointment by the governing body of a contracting agency to a vacant position during recruitment for a permanent appointment and deemed by the governing body to require specialized skills or during an emergency to prevent stoppage of public business. A retired person shall only be appointed once to this vacant position. These appointments, including any made concurrently pursuant to Section 21224 or 21229, shall not exceed a combined total of 960 hours for all employers each fiscal year. The compensation for the interim appointment shall not exceed the maximum monthly base salary paid to other employees performing comparable duties as listed on a publicly available pay schedule for the vacant position divided by 173.333 to equal an hourly rate. A retired person appointed to a vacant position pursuant to the subdivision shall not receive any benefits, incentives, compensation in lieu of benefits, or any other forms of compensation in addition to the hourly rate. A retired annuitant appointed pursuant to this subdivision shall not work more than 960 hours each fiscal year, regardless of whether he or she works for one or more employer. Now, did you hear anywhere within that law, 21221H, about the annuitant being paid a specific wage?
In the part that you read, it does reference the maximum.
Section.
Right, it does reference the maximum. But in addition to that, I have here a post from CalPERS, and it does discuss how the PEPRA rules tie in to the PERS retirement laws as well. And in their interpretation, which again they are using with us, it states under retiree compensation, the compensation paid to retirees cannot be less than the minimum nor exceed the maximum monthly base salary paid to other employees performing comparable duties. So under PERS law, in conjunction with the government code, they have set the minimum and the maximum.
But you didn't quote PERS law. You quoted the government code law.
Well, when she quoted it to me, which I do have it here, she stated the one section. I pulled that today and actually saw that same thing, and I said, I don't see a minimum. So I went to the CalPERS information, and I did print out their circular letter, which they quote those other sections as well. And it does reference a minimum and a maximum.
And that's for an annuitant.
Correct. Retired annuitants, yes.
Okay, so what is the minimum salary for our city manager, and what's the maximum, and what is he making? Does he fall within that range?
So, no, he does not. He is $21.82 below that
Less than
minimum,
the
below the minimum per hour. The base salary for the CM position, the minimum, is $81.82 an hour. Mr. Martin is currently making $60 an hour.
So what you have then is a PERS circular, but it's not a law.
It is quoting law, and they have also done, they're talking about that section. They're also talking about PEPRA and the PERL, which is the PERS, Public Employee Retirement Law. And they're talking about how they work together and how if one does one thing, it reverts to the other one. So I can provide
Then
copies.
if that's the case, I'm not happy with your staff report because you've only given me a half a loaf of bread. What I see here is nothing in this staff report as far as what you're utilizing for justification to raise the pay. There's nothing there that's relevant to your request. In fact, what I'm seeing is that if you don't have something else to back up what you're saying, is basically almost fraud, because you're trying to get the council to approve an amount of money to give away based upon a misrepresentation of your staff report. You see what I mean? And that's what I'm reading is a misrepresentation and a false false information, because that law does not say that the city is in violation of the law. It does not say that to comply with the requirements of the law. It does not say that the city to be in full compliance in order to comply with government code, and you referenced it like 4 times. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing in that law that you referenced that makes your request or justifies your request. In fact, it's really undue influence to us.
I do apologize for not attaching the email from the results of the administrative review. I do have a copy of it here. I did not attach that. I neglected to do that. I do apologize. When I quoted the section that I did quote, that was based on the PERS response to the administrative
But it's really
review.
talking about it's really talking about the number of hours that they can work, and he shall not get paid less than, or a maximum, whatever it was. I think it was a maximum amount of money. Doesn't say less than.
Right.
So I don't think your staff report fits your request at all. In fact, it's a poor staff report. I'm not trying to beat you up, but you can't come to us and say, I want you to give the city manager $20,000 based upon this reason, and the reason's not there.
Would you feel more comfortable about getting the actual documents that she has before making a decision?
Oh, absolutely. There's no way that I would approve this. The only thing that I would do to this is that if it went through, is I'd refer it to the district attorney's office, because this is not right.
Okay, so would you feel better about continuing the item till additional information?
Until we can continue the item until you bring in the supporting documents, that actually justifies the request.
We can do that.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Councilmember Miller?
Yes, in regard to Councilmember Moyer's statement, who is the contract with? Is the contract with Mr. Dean, or is the contract with Munitemp?
Our contract was with Munitemps.
If our contract was with Munitemp, I agree completely. It is our contract with Munitemp is a contract with Munitemp. And if Mr. Dean is being underpaid or overpaid or not paid at all, that's his concern with Munitemp. So I do not think that this project has to be, in my opinion, I'm ready to vote no on it because the contract is with Munitemp. But there are two aspects to this. One is the contract, and the second one is the fact that I, and I believe the rest of the council, has been continuously trying for the last 3 years to have complete staff reports so that we do not have to rely on anyone's interpretation of the facts, that we have the facts present here. So I would therefore like to make a motion to reject this payment because Munitemp is paying it. And secondly, I still would like to see back to this council a complete summary, not a complete summary, but complete statement of everything that has been written by CalPERS to our city.
Councilmember Welsh?
That was a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
And I do want to clarify, because you said to deny this at this point in time, but then you mentioned bringing it back. Do you really mean to continue this to a date certain with a full report?
No, I would like to deny this request or reject this proposal, but I would like at the next agenda to have a complete list of all the documents by CalPERS on this subject. They're two independent requests.
We have one motion.
Okay, so your motion,
Is to reject this resolution and still have all the documents brought back to this council for our review.
okay, just for a point of clarification, if we have no action, would it be like just a report?
Yes, that's right.
Looking at her to hear what she said. She's looking at you, so.
Yeah, I'm still a little confused as to how rejecting this now and then bringing it back at a later date is different from continuing this to a later date with a full report.
One would be a different item to evaluate.
Can I ask you, just speak closer to the mic, that's all.
I would like to evaluate the accuracy of this report based upon the documents from CalPERS. And now it's a separate item from evaluating whether or not to give this increase in salary.
Okay.
Okay, that's an excellent idea. Okay, I would like to make two motions. I can't think what
You
I
can just
can
make
make.
one motion just in two parts.
So would you like to rescind your first motion and change it to two motions?
Good, I can do three things.
That's
Good.
right.
Okay,
That's right.
one, I rescind my first motion. Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to reject this motion Okay. I make a motion to reject this resolution, and I'll wait. Is there a second to that motion? If there is none,
Oh, well, I think they're waiting to hear what else you're going to say.
okay. And the second one is to bring back this, this item with all the documents from CalPERS for the council's evaluation of those documents.
Okay, we have two motions. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Well, we had two.
Okay.
What were the motions?
Hello.
One was to reject this tonight, and then the second motion was to bring all of us,
A
all
full
the
report.
information from,
Okay,
Okay.
okay, what?
I agree with that.
A motion
We have
and a second.
Second.
I already
We
did.
already
It's
had
already
a second.
seconded.
Then vote?
No,
You have one question.
We do need public comment.
going to open public comment, then we'll bring it back for any additional questions or comments from the council
Okay.
before we vote.
Aren't you tired yet?
Mayor, members of the council, my name's Don Smith.
You sure?
I'm Think. That's what my parents told me, and I believed them. If I understand this correctly, we hired a temp agency to provide us one of their employees to act as our city manager, and our contract with the temp agency says, here's how much we're paying you, the temp agency. I guess as part of the next agenda, I'd be curious, if I were you, for a legal opinion of why if the employer of Mr. Martin, who it seems to me under this scenario is a different company than the city of Banning, is required to pay him a higher salary, why they aren't the ones required to do so. That's my question. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the council for any other comments or discussion.
Yeah. yes, I-
Councilmember Miller?
I always think that a question from Don Smith or the audience deserves some sort of answer. So my answer is that that's between Munitemp and our city manager. And the council is, I am not interested in that. And I don't think the council is interested in that.
Okay, Councilmember Moyer?
Just one question, ladies, and I know it's late and you've been here all night and had to wait on this to come up. Has anybody even approached Muni Temps about this?
Yes, we have. And as we know, temp agencies have their markup. Our current contract rate with them does not allow for the increase in salary that Mr. Martin is required to have under PERS law. So that's, we have been talking to them, we have been working with them.
Have we told them about the problem and?
Oh, yes.
And they basically told us, pay him, we're not going to do it?
Well, no, they'll pay them, but we have to pay them.
Well, they think we have to pay him.
Right. Well,
Okay, and
Right.
now, and again, in case, because I've talked to them about this before, it's 20,000 to Dean, and again, Dean, I'm not trying to get you from buying a new car, okay, I understand. But if we do this, Muni Temps is going to want their normal markup, and that could add another 10.
we are
I'm sure
refusing
that
to pay any
that's
additional
included.
markup.
No, it isn't.
You know, can I interject here? Can I simply ask that this item be withdrawn?
I'm sorry?
I just ask that this item be withdrawn.
No, because I am concerned that I want to be certain that in every aspect, the staff gives the council all the background information. That's what I've been trying for the last 3 years, and I want to continue that. So I want to see the background information.
I don't think withdrawing it precludes you from getting that information.
We have two motions. One was to reject so that would be one. And then the second one was to get additional information. So you could withdraw the item, which would be the first motion, and then the second one would still be to obtain information to,
Well,
to answer the question?
No, I do not wish to withdraw it because I think we want to end this. If we withdraw it, it can come back again. If we vote on it, that's the end of it.
Okay, well, we have a motion.
Do we second-
Do
and
you
it's
have any
seconded?
additional questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Peterson, you said you had a
The
question?
only thing that I wanted to comment and tag on to Don as an explanation, and this is not intending to beat you up, Michelle, or anything else, but when I first read this, I thought, given the number of people that have fallen out of City Hall over the last 3 years, based upon bad staff reports, based upon contracts, based upon a lot of different things, and I really thought we had passed that point. And then when I got this, or when we got this one, and when I referenced the government code and I saw that to me, it was almost a willful attempt to influence the council to pass a resolution to give Dean a bonus or a going-away present under false pretenses and misrepresented. This was my honest thought. And I thought, we can't still be traveling down this road. I hope we're not traveling down this road. As far as where it got, I don't care where this thing goes or where the council wants to take it. My only thought was, I don't want to see these things come before us like this anymore. I don't want to see it. Somewhere along the line, it has to stop. And that's it.
I think you have concurrence from the council on that.
Mayor?
Okay, Councilmember Welsh?
Just one comment. You know, one of the things that brought this to a head, and I'm not trying to sell one side or the other. When Dean was hired into the city, Dean was hired into the financial world, right? And in the middle of him being here, we asked him to assume the responsibility of the city manager. And I think this has caused the biggest hiccup because prior to that, we had an interim that was on contract within these guidelines.
Well, he was an annuitant. Mr. Smith was not a PERS annuitant, so he was not required to follow these guidelines.
No, but I'm talking about Croy.
Oh, right.
But we didn't have that mix-up with one moving from one job to the other. And I think that's what's caused us this little consternation here, or big question about it all. We were in the past, when Homer was here, paying him the minimum due that was your title, city manager. It's late. Do a city manager with no challenge.
No, that's actually not correct.
Oh.
As you read in my report, actually, when Mr. Croy was here, that's when PERS actually called about doing an investigation, because they read in the newspaper that Mr. Croy was coming on board, and they saw his rate, which was not the rate he was getting, it was the rate the temp agency was getting. That's when we started the investigation.
Oh, okay.
That's how long this has been going on. What happened is, because of their confidentiality clause, we did not know what the incumbent was making, the individual. And the agency did not want to release that information to us.
And the agency's responsible.
Right, so they dealt directly with PERS at that point in reporting the information directly to PERS, so they wouldn't have to tell us, but they would tell PERS directly. In that process, PERS rejected their files. They were going to report directly to PERS because the agency is not a PERS agency. They're a private company, and PERS doesn't deal with private companies. So PERS rejected all the files that they sent in with Mr. Croy's information. When this actually happened and the files got back to them, PERS contacted us and said, hey, we still don't have Mr. Croy's information. I said, Mr. Croy is no longer here. By then, Mr. Smith had been here, and now Mr. Martin was appointed. I said, Mr. Croy is no longer here, but we have a new annuitant in his place. So they resumed the investigation, now based on Mr. Martin's information. So we had to get all the information again. So we had to get Mr. Martin's contract with Muni-Temps. We had to get our contract with Muni-Temps regarding Mr. Martin. We had to provide all of the documentation over again, now related to Mr. Martin, because Mr. Croy was no longer here. But Mr. Croy would have been in the same situation had they completed the investigation, but he was no longer here at that point.
Okay. Was that it on your questions? Oh, okay. Councilmember Moyer and then Councilmember Peterson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Councilmember Peterson?
My only question is, and kind of been asked already, we contract to Muni-Temp or government staffing. They send us an invoice. I would assume we pay them. They, government staffing, issues the annuitant a check. Nowhere on our payroll, nowhere in our financial system is that government staffing employee even in or under our employee.
Correct.
So then why are we responsible? To me, it would have been they failed to get the proper amount on their contract. So it's no different, and I contract in my own personal business, I contract for my employees to go out in a security guard business. If I don't charge enough to the client to pay the employee and the workers' comp or whatever, or the employee falls down and gets hurt, the client doesn't pay the workers' comp, I pay. Or he gets sued, I pay, not the client. So why is the city being hammered for something that staffing failed to do on their end?
From my understanding, I was not involved in the original negotiations with Mr. Croy's contract.
I was.
Okay, I don't know who was. I
Well, we
didn't see
saw
your
the
signature.
contract Anyway.
But from what I was told, council refused to pay a higher rate. They said we will hire
Council, we set a limit.
at this, yeah,
No,
that was it.
We set a limit.
Correct.
And that limit was $95.
It was not enough to cover the position in their markup at the proper rate.
Well, then that's staffing's problem, not ours. That's not our problem. We've signed a
right.
contract. If they don't have enough to pay their employee, whose problem is that?
Well, the other choice, I guess, is, I don't know what the choice would be, not
Well,
to
the choice
contract
is
with
it's
them?
not our problem. With our city attorney? I mean, that sounds like they've got a personal problem, not us.
But PERS will hold us in violation. And I mean, not in this instance,
I think
but in a
this
normal
needs to be
instance,
referred to
PERS
this-
can still penalize the city. The city is
Not
the
under
PERS
this code.
agency. Yes,
No,
they
not
have
under-
documented.
Not under this government code.
Right. They can reinstate the employee, they can penalize us for hiring him in violation of the law. And I asked specifically, and they said in this instance, they would not do that. But they do have the power to do that under PERS law.
I find that almost ridiculous.
For our
A
legal
legal
counsel to
opinion.
weigh in?
Yeah, I think Michelle and Rita, if you could refer this matter to Colin and so we can have our personnel, I would need to look at, I don't have the original contract. I would need to see that. We'd need to do some personnel research on the PERS regulations and systems. So if you could get in touch with Colin and have him start looking into how this works and whether, I agree, I understand the concern that it's Muni-Temps is making the payments for the salary. So it seems that Muni-Temps, it's logical to me that Muni-Temps would be on the hook for if they made a contract that has a shortfall. But I would be curious to know why precisely PERS is claiming that the city is the entity on the hook for the PERS violation. We'd have to research that.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. We'll take them separately. The first motion was to reject the proposal or the staff report,
To reject the resolution.
the whole
was a
resolution.
resolution.
Okay, so please vote.
Not a resolution. It's
It
just
wasn't
a
a
First
resolution.
Amendment. There's no resolution.
The staff report.
And no to a change in the contract amount.
Say it one more time. A yes means that we're agreeing with what Councilmember Miller said.
A yes vote would be rejecting the proposed change in the contract amount of $20,000.
Please vote if you haven't. Motion passed 4-1. We have a second motion, which was to bring the report back, and it may, I'll just ask for clarification from Councilmember Miller. Do you want to wait till we get the information also from legal, or you just want the backup documentation? Okay. So the motion is to have a report come back to provide the backup documentation for today's report. Okay, all those, please vote. Second motion. Motion passed 5-0.